March 1963, Montreal, Canada.
A 26-year-old mother of 5 named Linda McDonald walks into a hospital called the Allen Memorial Institute. It's up the slope of Mount Royal in a Victorian mansion, a building people in Montreal once called Ravenscrag, as if this had to be any more foreboding.
She had just had her 5th baby, so she's exhausted, and she cannot sleep, and she is, by every reasonable definition, suffering from postpartum depression.
She's told the doctor at the Allen can help her. The doctor is the most respected psychiatrist alive.
And his name is Donald Ewen Cameron.
Now, because medical science barely understands women today, back then it was even worse. His treatment plan for Linda McDonald is as follows. She will be put into a drug-induced coma. This coma will last 86 days.
You heard that right. 86 days. That's almost 3 months.
During the coma, she will receive 109 sessions of electroconvulsive therapy. The standard protocol in 1963 is 3 sessions per week. She gets 109 because Cameron is clearly a mad scientist. She does this at voltages that, by Cameron's own published papers, run 30 to 40 times the normal level. Let's stop for a moment to remember, Linda is not being interrogated for treason. This poor lady was just depressed.
And while she's in the coma, a speaker is placed under her pillow. A reel-to-reel tape player loops a single recorded message into her brain, in her own voice, over and over, for hours, for days, for weeks.
When Linda McDonald wakes up, she's been asleep for the duration of a full school semester.
She does not know who she is. She doesn't know who her husband is. She does not even know that she has 5 children. She can't read, she can't write, she can't even use the bathroom.
A 26-year-old mother of 5 has to be re-toilet trained like she's just entered the world.
And her memories never come back, not a single one of them. Linda McDonald lived another 50 years and never recovered a single moment of her life before she was wheeled into the sleep room.
Sneaky footsteps in the night, clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know.
Welcome to Mugshot Mysteries. I'm Catherine.
And I'm Gabriel.
And this is part 3 of our series on MKUltra, the final part. And we're calling it The Sleep Room.
Last week, we showed you the heinous and madcap ways the CIA went after unexpecting Americans.
This week, we show you what it did to mothers. And then we show you what it became and why you go to bed every night with it hanging over your head. Donald Ewen Cameron, in 1957, is the most decorated psychiatrist alive. President of the American Psychiatric Association, president of the Canadian Psychiatric Association, founding president of the World Psychiatric Association.
3 presidencies. He has a triforce. He is, unfortunately, the guy other psychiatrists call when they need advice. He is, and I'd say, not a great believer in patient rights.
He runs a hospital in Montreal called the Allen Memorial Institute, and he commutes there every week from his vacation home in Lake Placid, New York.
So Canada's most respected psychiatrist is, technically, an absentee American who has a lake house.
Like that? Well, Cameron has a theory. He believes that mental illness is just a brain stuck in a bad groove, like a record with a scratch. And his big idea, the idea that he's going to spend his career on, is that you can fix a sick brain by erasing the entire record and writing a new one on top.
He calls the erasing part depatterning.
And he calls the writing part psychic driving.
We call it quacky.
Yes.
This harebrained procedure he believes will revolutionize psychiatry. It is also, in practice, the most thoroughly known method of destroying a human being ever attempted under the guise of being kosherly medical-like.
He's been doing it on Canadian patients since 1953. Now, in 1957, the CIA finds out.
Sidney Gottlieb the head of MKUltra, who you remember from the last 2 episodes, he contacts Cameron. He's ever on the lookout for, well, for a lack of a better phrase, fucked up things to do to people. The CIA opens a funding pipeline, $84,820 between 1957 and 1962, routed through the same fake foundation we told you about in part 1.
Cameron knows. Cameron takes the money. Cameron gives them exactly what they paid for.
The CIA didn't make a monster. The CIA hired one.
Now we're going to take you to the sleep room, because inside the Allen, on the 2nd floor, there was a room.
It had no official name. The patients called it the sleep room. The nurses called it the sleep room. Even Cameron, in his notes, called it the sleep room.
Between 6 and 10 beds, each one occupied by a patient in a drug-induced coma. Some had been there for 2 weeks. Some had been there for 2 months. One patient, in Cameron's own published research, was kept asleep for 101 days.
3 months with brief breaks for feeding and electroshock, because nothing says respite like electric shocks to your brain.
They were kept down with a chemical cocktail. Sodium amytal, thorazine, succinol, whatever was in the cabinet. If a patient stirred, the nurse just dosed them up.
Indefinitely, like some evil Sandman.
Oh, is this where we enter Metallica? Just sorry.
Let's stay serious, Catherine.
It is a serious song. Sleep with one eye open. Grip your pillow tight.
You're going to have to sleep with one eye open.
Well, that sounds like a threat.
Always a threat.
Well, while they slept, the depatterning began. 2 to 3 rounds of electroconvulsive therapy per day, and at 30 to 40 times the standard voltage, 6-second jolts until the patient could not remember their name, until they could not feed themselves, until they were in Cameron's own preferred phase, reduced to a state of vegetable existence.
That's a quote from his own writing. A state of vegetable existence. I'm not a smart man, but I know the term. They're vegetable is not a good state to be in. You want to be in any other type of food group.
Wow, that was the goal. Not a side effect, the goal. Make them a vegetable.
Once a patient was sufficiently emptied out, Cameron moved on to phase 2, the rebuild.
A speaker went under the pillow, though in some cases, there was a football helmet that was wired with internal speakers modified by Cameron's own lab assistants. Patients wore the helmets strapped to their heads for as many as 16 hours a day.
And through the speakers played a tape loop. Sometimes the patient's own voice from a session they didn't even remember. A statement about 20 seconds long about their mother, their father, their husband, themselves, probably their pets. The statement repeated, according to Cameron, between 250,000 and 500,000 times.
Now, first was a negative statement. You are selfish. You killed your mother. Your mother hates you. Then a positive one. You are loved. You are good.
Cameron sincerely believed this would erase the old patterns and write completely new ones. That the human personality could be wiped and rewritten like a cassette tape.
And it never worked. Not even once. There is no record of a single patient who walked out of the sleep room cured of literally anything.
Now, there are records of dozens who walked out without their childhoods, their marriages, their motor skills, everything just taken wholesale away from them like this was a Costco for the human soul.
Oh gosh, there probably is something like that.
In hell.
In hell, yes. Yeah. Well,
long lines there.
Let's take you to 1957, Winnipeg, Canada.
A young woman named Velma Orlikow had just had her first child. Her husband, David, is a member of the Canadian Parliament. By every available measure, they are a successful young family.
But Velma's depressed, and she just simply can't stop crying, and she can't bond with her baby. Now, today, we would call this postpartum depression. But in 1957, it was just depression.
Her doctor knows somebody. Her doctor recommends she sees a specialist, the best man in Canada, a man in Montreal named, Cameron. A lightning strike somewhere in the background as I say his name, probably.
That was your lightning strike. So she travels from Winnipeg to Montreal, and she checks into the Allen. She trusts the doctor because he is, after all, the most respected psychiatrist alive.
Velma Orlikow becomes one of the first patients to receive the full Cameron protocol. Induced coma, repeated electroshock, then the headphones, not playing any of the hits.
Now, the message that played in her ears 500,000 times was a recording of her own voice from a session she did not remember saying, "You are a bad mother." Real positive stuff there.
Well, when she returns to Winnipeg, she's unable to recognize her own husband. She does not know who David is. She does not know they have a daughter. She has to be, in her own later words, taught how to be a person again. This is like the Matrix. She's finally coming out of her pod.
Velma never fully recovered. She wrote about Cameron later in life. "The man who I had thought cared about what happened to me didn't give a damn. I was just a fly. Just a fly."
A young mother went to a hospital for help. She came home, a fly. What type of science is this? The answer is it should be a forbidden type.
Velma was not alone.
She was, depending on whose count you trust, one of somewhere between 80 and 332 patients who went through Cameron's program at the Allen between 1953 and 1964. Here are some of those individuals. You got Robert Logie, 18 years old. He had something as benign as a sore leg. His doctor thought it was psychosomatic and he sent him to Montreal for evaluation.
Cameron took him.
Logie was given, well, guess what? LSD by injection every other day, sometimes mixed with sodium amytal. He was put in the sleep room, the looping message under his pillow for weeks. And this message was, "You killed your mother," because leg pain and matricide isn't about the same thing.
Totally. Completely. Except his mother was alive, however.
When Robert Logie spoke about his time at the Allen, and this is decades later, he said this: "It wasn't treatment for anything, not a toenail or anything. It was out and out guinea pigs for brainwashing experiments."
Jean Steele, admitted in the late 1950s, came in for what her family called a nervous condition. Her daughter, after Jean came out, would describe her mother this way. Jean would sit in the dark for hours. She would write strings of numbers on the walls, codes. She did not know what they meant, and she would not stop writing them.
Her daughter said her mother never came back.
Cameron also experimented on children, of course, and he published a paper describing depatterning treatment on a 4-year-old in the American Journal of Psychiatry under his own name, while he was the president of the association that ran the journal.
A 4-year-old, electroshock, published, peer-reviewed. The whole lot of them, all that participated in that. They should have gotten some electroshock, all right. The kind where you're strapped to a chair.
We will let that one sit there.
But the patient I want to tell you about is one who was at the Allen in the sleep room while his mother was being depatterned, who was, in fact, inside her at the time, meaning she was very much pregnant.
Lloyd Trier is alive. He lives in Toronto. He's in his 60s, and Lloyd was at the Allen Memorial Institute in 1962.
He was in his mother's womb.
Lloyd's mother was admitted to the Allen with what would today be called postpartum anxiety. She was pregnant with Lloyd. She was given the full Cameron protocol, the drugs, the electroshock, the tape loops.
Lloyd was born after the experiments concluded. He has spent his entire life, all 60 years of it, dealing with the consequences of having been chemically brainwashed in utero by the MKUltra contractor.
He has been told in writing by the government of Canada that he does not qualify for any of the compensation programs because the programs cover patient, not their unborn children.
Lloyd Trier was a patient. He just hadn't been born yet.
I want to tell you what Cameron used because most of it he built himself in the basement of the Allen out of stuff he ordered from catalogs.
The most respected psychiatrist alive was running a homemade torture lab in a basement brought to you by Sears Roebuck.
The football helmets we already mentioned, soundproof sensory deprivation chambers in which patients were sealed by Cameron's order for stretches of up to 35 days at a time.
35 days in a dark, sealed room.
Hell no.
With zero human contact except the nurse who brought you food.
Nope.
And the technician who came in once a day to administer LSD like it was a Flintstones vitamin.
Those vitamins were legit, though.
It had been more legit with some LSD in them.
I think you can, maybe not die from an OD on Flintstones vitamins, but I definitely took more than I should have. Curare, the South American paralytic. It causes complete paralysis while the subject remains fully conscious. They can hear, they can feel, but they cannot move, and they cannot speak. Also, another hell no.
Cameron used Curare, which I have to say I have an irrational fear of. And he used it to make sure his patients couldn't interrupt those audio loops, couldn't pull the helmets off, couldn't signal that they wanted the experiment to stop.
He literally froze them with chemicals so that they could not cry out.
A patient described decades later the experience of being on curare while the tape loop played. She said she could literally feel the tears running down her face and into her ears, and she could not lift her hand to even wipe them.
And then there is the radio telemetry lab, Cameron's basement room rigged with the electromagnetic transmitters, antenna, and monitoring equipment, where he tried to see if he could change a patient's behavior by bombarding them with radio waves.
Again, all from a Victorian mansion in Montreal. The most respected psychiatrist in the world tried to remote control human beings using radio waves, like this was an RC car.
And it didn't work. For the record, nothing changed. The patients sent to the radio telemetry lab showed no signs of improvement or alteration or anything.
But he tried. The president of the World Psychiatric Association strapped human beings into a basement, turned on a transmitter, and tried to broadcast whole new personalities into them.
In 1964, the CIA quietly cut Cameron off. They had concluded internally that Subproject 68 had produced no useful intelligence.
They didn't shut it down because it was unethical. They shut it down because it didn't work.
So Cameron kept going on Canadian government money until 1964 when he retired. He moved back to Albany, New York, and he took a position at a hospital there. He continued publishing papers in psychiatric journals.
He was, until the day he died, a very respected member of his profession.
On September 8th, 1967, Donald Ewen Cameron went hiking with his son in the Adirondacks. He had a heart attack on the trail, and he died on the mountain. He was 65 years old.
He never faced a charge, never sat for a deposition, never apologized. The New York Times obituary called him a pioneering psychiatrist who had advanced the treatment of mental illness in Canada. Because most obituaries are bullshit.
Kinda. And Velma Orlikow was, at that moment, 10 years into being unable to recognize her own daughter. Linda McDonald hadn't been admitted yet. She was still 4 years away from her 86-day coma. Robert Logie was 23 years old, trying to figure out how to live with what had happened to him.
They read the obituary too.
Cameron is buried in Lake Placid, and his grave does not mention the Allen. 1973, Watergate's unraveling.
Richard Helms, the deputy director of the CIA, makes a phone call. He orders the destruction of every MKUltra file in the agency. It's firebomb time.
Trucks pull up to Langley, and the boxes go into an incinerator. 20 years of research on hundreds of subprojects on thousands of human subjects burn.
Perhaps they think that's that. They can't read a paper that someone else has eaten, right? Well, the financial files, stored in a separate building by some accounting policy, they're all missed. About 20,000 of those survive.
This is how we know any of this. Not because the CIA confessed, not because Cameron's notes were preserved, because some accountant in Langley filed the receipts in the wrong cabinet.
In 1975, the Rockefeller Commission report mentions MKUltra publicly for the first time. Lawsuits started in 1980. They have never really stopped. These lawyers, they're on the case.
The CIA has paid out small settlements. And as we record this, a class action certified in July 2025 is working its way through Quebec Superior Court. And it most certainly will not be the last.
Nobody has ever been criminally charged. Nobody has ever apologized. Cameron's portrait still hangs in the Allen Memorial Institute. They've conveniently removed his name from the place card, but the picture stays.
A portrait with no name.
This is the most accurate Cameron memorial possible, honestly.
Here's the part of the story that you need to understand.
MKUltra was officially terminated in 1973. The sleep room was closed in 1964. Sidney Gottlieb went back to his goats. Cameron, he was already dead.
The program ended.
The technique did not.
In 1963, the same year MKUltra was wound down, the CIA compiled everything it had learned into a single document. It was called the Kubark Counterintelligence Interrogation Manual.
Kubark is just a code word, the CIA's internal code name for itself in some classified context. It just means the agency. It's like the CIA version of Cosa Nostra.
Kubark is 128 pages of operational doctrine, drawn directly from Cameron's published research at McGill. It cites Cameron's work by name. It cites the Allen Memorial Institute by name.
Everything Cameron did to Linda McDonald, Velma Orlikow, and Robert Logie became, in Kubark, an official recommended interrogation method.
Sensory deprivation, sleep deprivation, isolation in a sealed room with no light, no sound, no human contact, audio loops, disruption of routine and biological rhythm, manipulation of food and water, the use of drugs or placebos.
An excerpt from the manual itself on isolation. Quote, results produced only after weeks or months of imprisonment in an ordinary cell can be duplicated in hours or even days in a cell which has no light, which is soundproofed, and in which odors are eliminated.
That sentence is Cameron's life work in one paragraph, distilled into a recipe.
Kubark was a training doctrine for CIA officers throughout the 1960s and 70s. It was used to train Allied intelligence services across Latin America, Argentina, Chile, Brazil, Guatemala, Honduras. It is the dirty manual that helped fight dirty wars.
It was updated in 1983 into a document called the Human Resource Exploitation Training Manual. Same techniques, same Cameron Foundation, new cover. The 1983 manual was used to train the Honduran death squad known as Battalion 316.
Battalion 316 abducted, tortured, and murdered over 180 people. They used Cameron's techniques.
Both manuals were declassified in 1997 after the Baltimore Sun threatened to sue. The CIA finally released them, and the McGill citations are still in the footnotes.
You can read them online. They're right there. You can just hit jump to recipes. They have a bibliography.
And then comes September 11th, 2001.
In the weeks after the attacks, the United States captures its first wave of detainees. Some are sent to Guantanamo Bay. Some are sent to a network of secret prisons in countries the CIA does not even officially name. Black sites. No-name countries for no-name prisons for no-name prisoners.
In 2002, Secretary of Defense Donald Rumsfeld signs a memo authorizing what the military calls enhanced interrogation techniques.
One of the authorized techniques is the use of isolation facilities for up to 30 days.
Cameron's number was 35.
They round it down.
Another authorized technique is sleep deprivation. Another is the use of stress positions. Another is sensory deprivation, and another is the manipulation of auditory stimuli.
This is from 2002 at a U.S. military prison. We're not talking Cold War anymore. We're talking the war on terror.
The detainees at Guantanamo Bay reported in formal statements and in court filings being subjected to all of the above. They reported being placed in dark, soundproofed rooms for weeks. They reported having music played at high volume into their cells for days at a time. They reported being kept awake for 48, 72, 96 hours.
They reported being given drugs whose names they didn't even know. They reported being unable to determine, after weeks of this, what year it was, what country they were in, whether their families were even alive.
In 2004, photographs leaked from a different American military prison, Abu Ghraib in Iraq. The photographs show detainees in stress positions, detainees in sensory deprivation hoods, detainees being subjected to long-term isolation.
Every technique in the Kubark manual is in Cameron's own playbook.
In 2014, the Senate Intelligence Committee released a 6,000-page report on the CIA's post-9/11 interrogation program. The report describes, in declassified detail, the systematic use of sleep deprivation, sensory deprivation, isolation, and audio manipulation on detainees.
CIA detainees at one facility, described as a dungeon, were kept in complete darkness, constantly shackled in isolated cells with loud noise or music, and only a bucket to use for human waste. The U.S. Bureau of Prisons personnel went to that location in November 2002, told CIA officers they had, quote, never been in a facility where individuals are so sensory deprived, end quote.
The report concluded that the techniques produced no actionable intelligence, none, but it hasn't stopped anyone from continuing to try. It starts begging the question of whether or not this is just enjoyable for people.
Cameron's techniques didn't work in Montreal. They didn't work in Latin America. They didn't work at Guantanamo. 3 generations of victims in 3 different decades, and the only thing they ever proved is that the techniques destroy a human being without ever extracting the information that they were supposed to extract.
And from top down, these techniques are completely authorized.
The Army Field Manual on Human Intelligence Collector Operations, currently in use, contains language about separation of detainees that human rights organizations argue is a euphemism for the same isolation protocols.
The Senate report described what was happening. Congress did not ban the techniques. The Obama administration restricted them. The Trump administration loosened the restrictions. The Biden administration kept most of them in place. As of 2026, the policies remain unsettled.
Which is to say, this is not history.
Let's talk about the world we live in now. I want everyone to sit with where we just ended up.
A Scottish doctor in a Victorian mansion in Montreal in 1957 was paid by the United States Central Intelligence Agency to figure out how to chemically erase a human personality and replace it with a programmed one.
He failed at the replacing part. He certainly succeeded at the erasing every God-given memory they ever had, though.
The CIA took what he learned. They put it in a manual. They taught it to other agencies. And those agencies taught it to other agencies. And the techniques migrated out of Montreal into the dirty wars of South America, into the war on drugs in Central America, into Guantanamo Bay, into Abu Ghraib, into the black sites that we still don't know the locations of.
This is not a Cold War story. This is a story about a Cold War weapon that the United States built, deployed, refined, and is still using.
When the CIA was caught in 1975, the country had a moment of horror. There was a Senate investigation. There was a presidential apology. There were settlements. There were promises that this would not happen again.
Never again. I very much appreciate your attention, and I yield to Senator McCain.
It happened again, and it's happening now. The men in suits who order it have different names. The protocol is the same. The men in black, well, they're not Slappy Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. No, this is something wholly worse and wholly still out there.
When you read in 2026 about a detainee being held in solitary confinement for over a year in a cell with no natural light, with no contact with the outside world, you are reading about Cameron's sleep room.
When you read about U.S. military interrogators using sleep deprivation as a tool, you are reading about Cameron's depatterning.
When you read about the CIA paying psychologists, the Mitchell and Jessen contractors who designed the post 9/11 interrogation program, who were paid $81 million for their work, well, you're reading about the modern version of Sidney Gottlieb writing checks to Cameron through the Society for Investigation of Human Ecology.
Different decade, different acronyms. Same job, same money, same techniques, same lack of accountability.
MKUltra never ended.
It just changed its name.
And that is where the series ends.
3 episodes, Frank Olson out a window in 1953, strangers in San Francisco, a village in France, soldiers in Maryland, mothers in Montreal, a teenager with just a sore leg, a baby in a womb.
And the manuals, the successor programs, the black sites, the men still inside them tonight.
When somebody tells you the United States doesn't do this anymore, what they actually mean is that the United States has gotten very good at not letting you see it.
The files were burned in 1973. The recipes survived in the cabinet next door.
They're still in the cabinet.
I'm Catherine.
And I'm Gabriel.
And this was Mugshot Mysteries. And if you enjoy tonight's descent into government-funded psychology horror, leave us a 5-star review. It helps more people find the show, which honestly just might be irresponsible. And definitely follow us on social media on Instagram or TikTok at Mugshot Mysteries Podcast for behind-the-scenes content, research photos, declassified documents, and all the things that probably should have gotten burned. But before we go, Gabriel, what did we learn today?
We learned that the most respected psychiatrist in the Western world spent 12 years torturing men, women, and children. How's that for a first sentence? We learned that he called it medicine, his peers called it medicine, and the United States Central Intelligence Agency wrote him a check and could care less what it was called. We learned that the program he ran was only the research and development. What was delivered was a manual. The manual was distributed. The manual is still in use. And we learned that the next time you read about an American detainee in a soundproof room that has no light, in an unknown country, in an unknown prison, it all started in that dead, quiet sleep room so long ago. The records are gone. The men are dead. The technique, it's in the curriculum.
Sleep tight.
Sneaky footsteps in the night. clues that vanish out of sight. Grab your hat and magnifying glass. We'll talk this case and have a blast. Mugshot mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists and turns that never fail. Laughs and chills, it's quite the show. Who did it? Tune in to know. Gem, a secret note, a shady figure in a trench coat. The clock is ticking, the plot gets thick. We'll crack this puzzle quick as a click. Mugshot mysteries, we're on the trail. Twists